everyone, and welcome. I'm Stacy Outlaw, Chief Marketing Officer at WAEPA. Thank you for joining us for the 2025 WAEPA Fed Summit and Annual Member Meeting. Today's theme, Mission Driven, Powered by People, is about how to create healthy organizations and why that matters. You'll hear how leaders can build cultures that keep employees engaged and ensure the mission stays on track. We'll begin with a State of the Association addressed from our CEO, Shane Canfield. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Shane Canfield, WAEPA's CEO. Shane has led WAEPA since 2016, bringing more than 30 years of experience in insurance and nonprofit sectors. He currently serves on the board of the Professional Insurance Marketing Association and is widely recognized for his leadership across the industry. Shane, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Stacy, and welcome everyone. It is a pleasure to be here today. WAEPA exists for one reason: to serve civilian federal employees and their families. That mission has guided us since 1943, and it remains our North Star. We recognize that many of you are working in a period of uncertainty. Federal employees continue to face questions about budgets, shifting priorities, agency reorganizations, and the impact of new technology on the workplace. At the same time, families everywhere are navigating economic pressures and planning for the future. These realities make our role at WAEPA even more important. Our commitment is to provide stability and peace of mind during uncertain times. This year's annual member meeting theme, Mission Driven, Powered by People, reflects who we are at our core. Mission drives everything we do, and it is people, our members, our staff, and our board who make WAEPA strong. WAEPA's mission is to support the health, welfare, and financial well-being of civilian federal employees. And the way we bring that to life is through 6 pillars. These are part of our strategic plan. It's not an abstraction. This is how we run our organization. And those pillars, marketing and outreach, member service, finance, IT, human capital, legal, and compliance, talk a little bit about each one of those and how that helps us bring our life to mission for you. Marketing and outreach, we are not at the table when a new federal employee is hired. They are presented with HB options, they're presented with retirement options, they're presented with one life insurance program, which is FEGLI, which is a fine program, but we do have many advantages, and we'll talk a little bit about those later on. But in order to have people know about us, we do have to advertise. So you will see us in the DC area on radio, television. We do PR work. We do support other organizations in the federal community so that people know who we are. And at the end of the day, about 60% of our business comes through referrals. People just talking to their colleagues, their friends about WAEPA. Hey, have you heard about this organization and the value they bring? But we still get a lot of value out of advertising. So that's why we as a nonprofit, we are a nonprofit, are advertising. Member service, we spend a lot of time on member services. Our employees who are on the phone answering emails, they are licensed insurance agents. They have a lot of additional training on top of that. And so this isn't a traditional call center. These are licensed professionals that are there to help you and anybody who calls just asking questions about the program. On the finance side, we'll talk about some additional details later, but I will tell you we are, by design, extremely well reserved for catastrophic claims. For example, COVID, we did have excess mortality during COVID, and as a life insurance company, this is the business that we're in, but well reserved there, and we still have a large surplus that we use for other activities in the organization, and we also use it for our premium refund. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. IT, we've done some amazing things in IT. We are keeping current, even though we're over 80 years old, we are keeping current with IT, and not just in the back office operations of WAEPA, but for example, our application process. We've moved to an online application process for the majority of members. which means you log into our website, you answer some questions, and we can give you a quote and an approval real-time online, about 10 minutes. This is a tremendous advancement in our industry, and we're a leader in this area. Most life insurance applications from when I started in the life insurance business 30 years ago, this was a 2 to 4 week process. Now it's 10 minutes. So we're keeping up with technology, not only because we have to, but our members demand it. Human capital. We know that our staff are at the heart of WAEPA. We do invest in our people. We invest in their well-being, the culture. We spend a lot of time talking with them. We have a culture committee and we make sure that our staff feel at home in our organization. And that allows them to serve you better. Legal and compliance. We are a 501c9. That nonprofit status has a whole series of very tight regulations that we must follow. Insurance itself has many regulations that we must follow. There are national regulations that we follow and state regulations that we follow. It's a very regulated work environment. And we spend a lot of time making sure that we're running the business the right way, and that that's both ethical and critical for long-term growth. And that's what we're all about. We're about long-term growth. We want to be here not just for the people that are members today, but to fulfill those promises 10, 20, 30, 40 years out sometimes, that we will be there to pay beneficiaries a claim should the member not be here anymore. Our single mission, the way we deliver, principally, we deliver on our mission to promote the health, welfare, and financial well-being of federal employees, is through our life insurance program. It is a group program. That means we're all pooled together. There are significant advantages to that arrangement rather than individual life insurance policies. We are significantly better in terms of the maximum amount of insurance a person can buy, 1.5 million of coverage. We have some riders that you rarely see in group policies, and you certainly don't see with the federal program. Chronic illness rider. This allows an early payout of benefits up to $500,000 if diagnosed with a chronic illness. It's not long-term care, but it functions a lot like long-term care. We have a new program, automatic benefit increase rider, which will add $25,000 in coverage each year for up to 10 years. What's different about this is that there's no medical underwriting required. So this is really a good inflation hedge. I will tell you, those two riders are extremely popular, and people recognize the value in them. Portable coverage, if you've heard our ads, you hear us talk about that a lot. What that means is that if you leave federal service, whether you retire, go on to take another job, you move to a different industry, you can take our coverage with you. Employer plans, you can't do that. There are some exceptions, but by and large, you cannot take an employer plan with you. You can't do that with FEGLI. Like I said, a couple of small exceptions. But with us, it doesn't matter if you leave federal service. You can still keep your policy. And then short-term disability insurance is a new product as of 2 years ago. We're very excited about that, and people are taking advantage of that. This is something that is not offered in the array of federal benefits. So these products are how we fulfill our mission. And our mission is everything that we do. As a nonprofit, we think differently. That's evidenced by things like our premium refund that we do every year. Commercial insurance companies don't do this. But it also gives us a long-term view. We don't have to report to Wall Street once a quarter on our earnings. We don't have outside investors as a nonprofit. No nonprofit does. So that is a really different way of looking at how we run WAEPA. And we are a unique blend. One way I described it to somebody that resonated with them is we're a for-profit business. because we have to run it like an insurance company, of course, in a nonprofit wrapper. So it's really a wonderful place to work, and it really allows us to deliver on our promises. Financials and performance remain really strong for us this year. We did continue our premium refund program. In September, we gave back $4.4 million to members. This was 10% this year. In 25 of the last 26 years, we've given back a portion of premium to our members. It's not guaranteed, but it's a way that we share in the success of the organization with members. We paid nearly $18 million in claims. We pay our claims fast, on time, and we help people in need without delay. This year, we anticipate premium revenue is going to be about $49 million, and this keeps us well positioned to serve members now and in the long term. Membership has held steady at about 44,000 members. We usually like to tick that number up a little bit every year. This year we'll be pretty close to flat, and that's really due to economic uncertainty. When people don't have confidence in the world around them and their own personal financial situation, they hesitate on making any new purchase. I will tell you, if you're one of those people who did that, please consider WAEPA, because we're a stronger program than FEGLI. We partner with New York Life. We're extremely well reserved, and you're going to save money with us. But we understand that in uncertain times, people are hesitant to make changes. But our activity is great. 4,100 new applications already this year. Half of those have converted in the very first part of the year, first half of the year, to new insureds. So it's strong, as you can see by these numbers. All of this plays into us fulfilling our commitment, not just for a better deal today, but for the future, to continue that stability into the future. And I'll give you one example of a life insurance industry tactic that we don't ever do, and we call it the race to the bottom. So it's possible for us to either reduce our premium or lighten up on underwriting standards to get more people into the plan. And occasionally you'll see a company do this, where they set that up so they get more people into the plan in a hurry, and then what do they have to do? Because it's not sustainable long term, they have to either increase rates or tighten up underwriting. And this kind of game playing is not something we ever do. Our rates are all set by actuarially determined experience, and our premiums accurately reflect those rates. So it's a very solid, stable plan, and it'll be here for another 80 years. So this slide, strategy and business model, I'm going to take two pieces of our mission now, how we turn that into strategy, and what does that look like in the future. So one pillar, we call it preserving the core, and that means making sure that our rates are stable, that we're properly reserved, that our life insurance plan is current, that we add new plans which are relevant to federal employees. Like we added 2 years ago, short-term disability. Early next year, we're going to be adding group whole life. These are custom designed programs. This is our core business. On the other side is stimulating growth. And let me give you one example of ways that even in a nonprofit environment that we can still adapt and grow. The 501c9 regulations had some gray area in there about who can join an association. We're an association at heart, that's the nonprofit piece. Who can join? And common interpretation over the years has been current, in our case federal employees. You have to be currently employed to join the plan and take advantage of our life insurance plan. Well, we weren't convinced that the regulations actually said that, and we did a private letter ruling with Treasury. They agreed with us. And so the change was that former federal employees can now join our program and take advantage of WAEPA's group rates and our stability. So this is an example of stimulating growth. So growth matters to us. Programs like this, I'm occasionally asked, how big do you want to be? And the idea is, in insurance, generally speaking, there's no single place where you need to be and then you've accomplished your mission. With insurance, especially life insurance, the larger your plan is, the more people in it, you spread the risk among all those people, your reserves grow and grow, and you're better prepared to serve everybody with the largest plan available. And our plan is strong. 44,000 people is a lot of people in the plan, but if we can get to twice that in the next decade, this will be good for everybody, including future insureds. A couple of the other things that we do, which, as far as I know, nobody in our space is doing. If you join WAEPA, we do have a custom program put together with Ernst & Young to do financial planning for you on a confidential basis in a closed environment with certified financial planners at EY. By design, they don't sell anything. EY doesn't have any products that they sell. This is a complimentary service. I would suggest that if this is of interest, you should do it. Now, I will tell you it's a lot of work doing a personal financial plan. I've done it. This is hours worth of work, but the payoff, especially in a time of uncertainty, is tremendous. The peace of mind you'll get from having a plan against all this turmoil in the economic environment in the workplace, it's worth it. This is no cost. Our scholarship program is really popular. Nearly $3 million we've given to children of civilian feds, and I encourage all of you with college-age children to have them apply. It's a tremendously popular program. And then, of course, we do have a lot of educational webinars, resources online, all designed around the federal workforce. I mentioned Group Whole Life. We did have some delays with launching this product. I did mention last year that we would be launching it this year. We are days away from getting this done. And we think this will be a tremendous program. We have a lot of requests for whole life insurance, and that has remained so for the last decade. It's been a complicated product because it does contain cash value. Regulators look at it closely, but our partner is really strong. It's New York Life Insurance, and they've been a tremendous help to us as we navigate launching this product. One might say they're the leading whole life insurance company in the United States. We couldn't have a better partner. So I want to close with saying that we are here for the long term. We have demonstrated that for many, many years. And I'll close with an interesting discussion we had when I first came on in 2016. We were trying to figure out what's a marketing message? What are we going to tell people? Because WAEPA really didn't market before that period of time, and the results showed it. So there were different things you could talk about, one of which was, do you want to talk about your experience and how long you've been around, how stable you've been over many years? And back then, in 2016, 2017, the conclusion we came to was, no, that makes you look old and out of touch. Well, what's really interesting is we shifted that a few years back, and it was absolutely the right thing. People want stability in their financial partners, and we have that. And so we talk about our 80-plus year history, and we do talk about our partner, New York Life, arguably the best life insurance company in the country. WAEPA is truly mission-driven, and we are powered by and for people. Now I'll turn it over to Terry to take us into the panel.
Welcome, and thanks for joining us. My guests today are Colleen Heller-Stein, the Executive Director of Chief Human Capital Officers Council at OPM, Scott Blackburn, a Senior Partner at McKinsey, Joe Mitchell, the Cooley Fanning Director of Strategic Initiatives and International Programs at National Academy of Public Administration, and Alex Snider, former Strategy Lead at GSA. Thank you all for joining me today. Joe, I want to start with you, and I want to get our theory out of the way first. So how does the National Academy of Public Administration define a healthy organization?
The work that we've been doing has been grounded in thinking about organizational health as how you deliver on performance. So it's your internal culture, it's how you work together across silos, across teams inside an organization, but ultimately it's about delivering performance. And I think a lot of times people think that organizational health is like, that's the soft stuff, I don't have to pay that much attention to it, but it's really critical to driving the overall performance results.
And how do you connect it to what happens in the federal government?
So what happens in the federal government is it's really the way leaders and managers and employees work together. It's the culture that you establish. It's the relationships that you establish. It's grounded in the mission, and it's ensuring that you work together collaboratively and respectfully in an inclusive environment where people are able to share. These are my recommendations for how we could improve and work together collaboratively.
Has it been a natural application of the concept of organizational health to federal agencies?
I definitely think that it's an important aspect and something that federal leaders, OMB, the work that we did, we were asked by OMB to do this work. There was an MOU, a memorandum that was out on organizational health and the need for agencies to take action on that. So what we were asked to do is to look at how do you operationalize that? What are some strategies and tactics that you can put into place? So I think there's definitely a natural application, and certainly my experience with federal agencies is the people there are very dedicated to the mission.
Well, let's take that operationalization concept. That's a hard word to say.
I know, isn't it?
I feel like I need to do it again. Operationalization concept. And Colleen, let me turn it to you, because from your vantage point at OPM, what do you see in terms of indicators of operational health across federal agencies and across the federal workforce?
It's a great question. So I think, we are at a point where we've had a lot of change. And I know that, some folks have been concerned that there won't be a federal employee viewpoint survey this year. That being said, FEVS is a great measure of engagement, but it's not the only measure, and I think that's important to remember. Looking at issues like performance, we see some clear direction to build a strong performance culture in government and to continue to build that. And that really relies on regular communication and feedback between managers and employees. And that can be everything from course correction, but it's also really recognizing excellent performance and celebrating those wins too. And I think that regular communication helps to build that culture. Also builds trust, gives an opportunity for a supervisor to listen. You can talk performance, but I think that's also an opportunity, if you're doing it regularly enough, to get to know your employees and try to build that culture. So I just, add that, while we may not see results this year, we know that trends have shown the biggest predictor of an employee's engagement is that relationship with the frontline manager. So I think we'll be really relying on managers to be having those conversations regularly.
Are there early warning signs that pop up when an organization isn't healthy? Are there things that the Chico Council looks at?
It's a great question. I think, most Chicos are focused on looking at sort of two things in their organization. And I think one is, what is the capacity of this organization to meet its mission, to achieve strategic goals and objectives? And if we don't think we're at capacity, how do we then work with our agency leadership to align resources appropriately so that we can do that with the resources we have? So that's one. I think two, looking at and trying to get a sense of the organization's resilience. Is this organization flexible, agile, able to change? If we don't feel like we're in that place, or if we feel like we've got employees who are sort of, frozen maybe, how do we empower employees? How do we empower managers to help those employees come along so that we can be more agile and we can sort of move forward and not be frozen?
You mentioned several terms in your responses here. You talked about employee engagement, you talked about performance culture, and you mentioned that the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey has been canceled for this year. So that was a tool that many organizations would rely on to assess organizational health. What tools are going to be out there now for a look at that employee engagement, at that performance culture, at that general organizational health?
So I think, at a macro level, we'll be looking at, are agencies able to deliver? Are services still being provided at a level that is expected by the American public? for, I hope, all federal employees, our North Star is that ability to serve, and that's what calls us to service. So I think we have that to look at holistically. And then I think besides that, it is trying to gauge where employees are in sort of moving in this direction. Having those regular conversations to see where support is needed. Hopefully, if it doesn't exist already, managers are building that culture where someone isn't afraid to sort of raise their hand and ask a question or say, I need help about, help with something, so that if there are those sort of early warning signs, managers can address those pretty quickly.
Are there tools that OPM is advocating for that the agencies might use themselves? If you're not going to do FEVs government-wide, are there tools that agencies can use themselves to assess where their employees are?
Absolutely. And so I think part of the guidance that was paired with the announcement that FEVs wouldn't happen as we normally expect this year is that agencies are absolutely empowered to administer pulse surveys, in coordination with OPM, but certainly we don't want there to be no measure, but we're just not doing it at the scale that we were used to previously.
What will that mean in terms of how the government is able to assess organizational health and performance government-wide?
Yep, so we may not be using all of the same measures, although I suspect that agencies may borrow from some of the questions they're used to tracking in FEVs, and that's where something like the CHICO Council really can help. So, as we convene our CFO Act, CHICOs, we can sort of facilitate that dialogue to see, are we seeing trends? Are there concerns? One of my goals is to build that same culture of performance, but also trust among the CHICOs, so that we can have real discussions about where challenges are and how we might partner to mitigate those.
Are you hearing any concerns at this point from the CHICOs or the agency leaders about how they might proceed with this process?
Not really. I know that some agencies have already begun to think about pulse surveys. I don't think it's too soon to say I myself as an OPM employee received a pulse survey, an opportunity to provide some feedback just this morning. So I think it is something that we're still encouraging.
That's good to hear. So Scott, I want to transition to you, and we'll take it from the federal space to the private sector space for a minute. McKinsey has done a tremendous amount of work looking at organizational health in the private sector. What does the data tell us about the link between health and mission outcomes in large, complex private sector companies?
Companies that are healthy are generally, they're both winning today. Public sector or publicly traded companies, they have quarterly earnings to meet, they have annual goals to meet, et cetera, and those responsibility to the shareholders, and they have to perform in the short term. But our decades of research and working with clients have shown that those companies that really focus on organizational health, as we've been talking about, are the ones that continue to win year after year. They continue to deliver for their customers, for their shareholders, for their employees, for their suppliers, and all their stakeholders over and over again. In the private sector, innovation has never been happening as quickly as it has been recently. And I think the three dimensions, similar to what Joe mentioned earlier as far as defining organizational health in the public sector, I think the three dimensions that we would really think about is one is aligning around a direction, having a clear strategy that is easily understood by all your employees, by your customers, by your shareholders, by your investors, that is compelling and energizing, right? So number one is having that clear alignment. Number two is really around the ability to execute. This is everything from accountability, your coordination control, your processes in your organization, having the right people, having the right motivation, and having the right capabilities in the organization. And the third that we often forget about, or companies often forget about, is the ability to renew itself. And this is innovation and learning. It is having the long-term talent pipeline. It is having an external orientation, both for your customers, but also an understanding of like what your competitors are doing, what your customers care about, innovations that are happening around that could disrupt you. And those people that have that external orientation, tend to be able to renew a lot better.
As you've watched this data over time, is there anything that has been especially surprising to you, a trend that popped out that you were like, I didn't see that one coming?
Well, one is, interesting enough. Yesterday, I was catching up with one of my old mentors, Secretary Bob McDonald, who was both the Procter & Gamble CEO and then became I worked with as a Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And as Bob likes to say, the scarcest resource is leadership, right? And the one thing that as you take a look at healthy organizations, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector, is that emphasis on leadership from the top all the way down to the bottom. And how are you creating new leaders? How are you empowering leaders all the way up from your CEO to your frontline managers that really, and if you go in time after time, if you ask employees of what really is the key determinant of like their career, their satisfaction, their fulfillment, the impact they're able to have. And generally it's that frontline manager, right? And it's the people that could run you out of the company. It's the people that could inspire you to go think bigger and be better than you are. And being able to kind of create that leadership all throughout the organization continues to underpin everything in organizational health.
That makes a lot of sense. And I want to posit maybe a different perspective on leadership. Certainly we've all heard the Silicon Valley approach to move fast and break things, that's the way you lead organizations, into this challenging time. Some might say the Trump administration certainly came in with that mantra as well with Elon Musk and Doge. How does that approach affect organizational health?
Yeah, it is a way. It is a method. Clearly, in fairness to a lot of people in Silicon Valley, it's worked really well for a lot of organizations over time. And even if you step back from Silicon Valley, and as we study, organizations and executives across all industries that do well, generally those that move fast because of the rate of innovation tend to do better. Fast and bold, right? Incrementalism in the private sector does not work well. It certainly doesn't work well in Silicon Valley, which is why I think you see it a little bit more, in that area. With that said, it needs to be thoughtful. You need to think through the second and third order effects of that. You need to think through the long-term effects of some of the short-term decisions that we're making. If we go back even into history and all our research into organizational health, one of the prime examples is Atari. Atari was iconic when I was a child, it was one of these. I think it was written about in Search of Excellence. It was written about in Jim Collins' book, right, as being kind of like one of these organizations that is just going to last forever. But they made some short-term decisions that ended up kicking out a bunch of engineers who then went and founded companies like Apple, right? Rather than kind of like getting that renewal aspect that I was talking about earlier. So it needs to be done with a long term in mind and being kind of a lot more thoughtful. The one other thing that is a best practice from Silicon Valley that I hope we eventually see here is it was interesting when they started all the innovation back in the 70s and 80s. One of the laws that California had was around labor being able to kind of move between organizations. They didn't have like the non-competes and everything like that. And as a result of that, that forced all of those companies to really focus on talent. How do I grow talent? How do I keep talent? And then also understanding that talent is going to go between different types of organizations. And there was a flow. And around that, there became kind of like a respect for the for people and the capabilities that they do. And I think that's one kind of thing I'd love to see the Washington federal government ecosystem adopt.
So you'd advocate for more flexibility
Absolutely.
as people move between agencies and maybe even career fields?
Absolutely. I think in coming in and out of government, I'm somebody that started in the private sector. I came into government, and then I'm back in private sector. But like seeing people like Scott Cooper, who's come in from the private sector, seeing organizations like Noble Reach trying to promote more of this like talent coming in for a tour of duty into government. I think the government will benefit. We'll have more talent. Some of those people are going to stay, by the way. But also, I think the country and the private sector will benefit as well of having more people who have been a civil servant, understand what that is, respect what that is, and see the impact that civil servants have.
That really hits on your alignment around direction and renewal concepts from earlier.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, Joe, I want to transition to you because NAPA's paper on organizational health is pretty straightforward and offers some great techniques and practices, especially when there are big transitions in leadership. So when that happens, to Scott's point, it can create some misalignment around direction and priority. So how do leaders at different levels stay aligned on mission and value when leadership and political priorities change?
So I think, my experience with career civil servants is that they understand that administrations are going to change. I mean, at least every 8 years you're going to have a new administration. I think the average political appointee is in their position for like 16 to 18 months. So we were used to a lot of change. And so I think, to me, a lot of it comes, it's like both mindset and action. It's important for both, appointees who are coming into the government, as Scott was talking about, to come in understanding that the people who are there do have institutional knowledge, they have values, they're committed to the mission, and that they are there to help you and help you achieve the mission. So understanding that, I think also career people, of course, have to recognize that, as people come in, that there's value, one, from a democratic standpoint, people have voted for this administration and they have a right to implement their agenda, but also that you're getting things from people who have that outside perspective. So I think a lot of it is around respect across those different divides that we see and recognize that there are a variety of ways of achieving missions and that we need to be open, to that, to different approaches to things. Some of the things that we recommended, first of all, is always be grounded in the mission. You need to develop a bold mission or vision around that mission, and you need to be able to explain to people, okay, this is how we're going to achieve that, and we need to promote it throughout the organization. Not so much top down, like organizational health is everybody's job, so it shouldn't be seen as, this is the latest initiative of the Office of the Director, but like really, enlist people across the organization to say, this is our critical mission. We all know that it's critical. Let's develop a vision around that, and let's inculcate that. And then let's create a culture where everybody can participate, everybody can be involved, people respect the different decision rights that people have. They bring their whole selves to work. They work together across various divides, and then you learn continuously. You're able to iterate, start small. We have an Agile Government Center at the Academy, and really focus on, there are things that you can just start small, learn, and then iterate. You don't have to get it right exactly the first time.
NAPA's put out a recent white paper that talks about the responsibility of political appointees to collaborate with their career civilian staff. That seems to me to be a key part of what you're suggesting here. What are the specifics that you suggest there?
I think like really it's both mindset and action. Coming in, realizing that these are talents that I can leverage, and I want to enlist people to help me achieve these objectives, and realize that they have the institutional knowledge, the long-term perspective, and a lot of expertise, and that you need to leverage that and work with them to achieve your mission.
Colleen, is OPM putting out any kind of guidance for political appointees or senior career leaders on how to have these mission-based conversations, performance setting standards?
No specific script or specific guidance, but just honestly really encouraging those conversations to happen. And I think, being a career federal employee who has worked through a number of transitions over my decades in government, a lot of what has been said rings true. Like, I have really felt like I am contributing at OPM. Like I have been able to add value, which has been wonderful. And certainly with the onboarding of our new director, have that direct line. And I do feel, I just heard in a meeting earlier today, like a sort of a shout out to career staff who have brought institutional knowledge that's been helpful as we're thinking about new and different ways of thinking things, thinking about doing things. So I think, I no specific guidance going out, but I do think that there's a recognition there. And I would say from my experience in prior agencies, that's always been the case. I feel like there's very quickly a recognition that we work together and we're sort of stronger when we do.
Joe, we're talking here about the senior leaders, but the role of middle management in this transition seems to me to be really important. Folks maybe don't feel like they have a voice, but they're the key wheel getting the work done.
They are so important, and I think that everybody, we all have a part of the world, so maybe you have a narrower slice than someone else that is more of a senior level, but I do think it's important to recognize people look to you, the middle managers, you're leading teams, you are so critical to making the connection to both the most senior leaders and also the rank and file employees. So they really look to you. And as I think we know, people tend to leave supervisors, not agencies. And so it's absolutely vital that you model the practices that you want to see move in management.
And Scott, what's private sector best practice here, both on incoming leaders talking to existing leaders and middle management?
Yeah, I think it's communicate early and often, right? I think what I often talk to a number of incoming leaders, I'll say two things. One is be confident that you've had amazing skills that you might have developed in other industries, or if people are coming from Congress or whatever it might be, but you were chosen for a reason, and you're going to bring an incredible perspective, and you're going to bring your strengths into government and be able to make a difference. But at the same time, be humble, right? Because the jobs in government are so big, and they're so important. I've never met one person that's ready to be a cabinet secretary or comes in locked and loaded, ready to go in and as a political appointee and knows everything about their job. Different people do. Different people have those pieces of the puzzle, and so go in and be humble and listen. Talk to your employees. Talk to the people that came before you. Would love to see more of that, just reaching out to the formers of, what do you wish you had done differently? What did you not get a chance to do? What did you wish you knew when you were stepping into this role? Get different perspectives, reach out to industry, reach out to academia, and as much as possible, just be a sponge and take in all that different kind of information and educate yourself so that when you're making these big decisions that affect large organizations, that affect all the American people, you're making the best possible decision that you can, but do it with confidence and humility.
McKinsey just put out a paper recently on some of those best practices for incoming senior politicals. Was organizational health in there anywhere?
It absolutely was, and as Joe mentioned before, and oftentimes, political appointees are only in for 16, 18 months, 24 months, if we're lucky, 4 years or 8 years, but it's usually shorter. And so there is a tendency to just focus on the time that you're in. But the leaders that I've seen over multiple administrations and all the time that I've been involved, and I've served in different parties and different administrations, is those that know, have the long-term mission and that North Star in place, and they give everything they can to kind of make a difference while they're in there, but then they are thinking long-term, they're building the leadership capabilities, they're making the right decisions that set the organization up for long-term success. Those are the ones that really become like the legends that we smile when we talk about, that really make kind of a lasting difference. And the biggest, I think everybody comes in wanting to be one of those, wanting to make kind of a long-term difference in the world, and I just encourage people to stick to that and play the long game.
That's a good perspective. Alex, I want to come to you next, because we've kind of gone from the macro level, the federal government as a whole, to organizations, now down to the individual and the employee. You've paid a lot of attention to employee well-being in the federal government, in the federal government space. So things are a little challenging for individual employees out there. There's a quote from Kipling that says, "If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs." And I think about that for folks who are looking around to their left and right, and there used to be somebody working there and now there's not. What can employees who are kind of caught in the middle here between shifting priorities, leadership turnover, public scrutiny, how do they keep their head? Literally, figuratively.
I notice I want to slow down with this question because I think hearing this conversation, I notice myself feeling a little bit sort of like a little tight because it sounds like this conversation is one that will be happening in a normal transition, a normal administration. And what's happened over the last 8 months has not been normal. And I think from a leadership perspective, it's been kind of like the guidebook, the manual of how to sort of break organizations and how to take organizational health and sort of like throw it aside. And so the reason I wanted to slow down is I do want to get to the role of individuals, sort of our own individual resilience and well-being, but that doesn't exist in a vacuum. And it exists in a framework where leadership has responsibilities. And the word facilitator was one way to talk about leadership, and the way that word comes from the origin of to make easier. And when leaders are doing things like the way the fork in the road that was communicated, the way that all these firings have been done in a very hasty way, in a very unthoughtful way, a very sort of dysregulating way, where you walk in and you don't know if your badge is going to let you in or not. These have impacts on people, and they have consequences. And actually, I wrote an anonymous article in Federal News Network a few months ago titled, "Dear Political Appointees, Do Not Break the Workforce You Need." Because the way that these things are being communicated, the way there's no context around why decisions are being made, not listening, and the whole idea of moving fast and breaking things, what you're breaking is sort of the organization. And I wanted to go back to what Joe said about sort of you don't leave organizations, you leave supervisors. I didn't leave a supervisor. I had a great supervisor. I left an agency and I left a government because of what's been happening here. But to the question of sort of this paradox of there's the collective, there's the system that we're in, and then there's the individual. What are those individual responsibilities? Like I said, I think as an organization, there's responsibilities towards helping people feel psychologically safe, helping people feel like they can share what's on their mind, that sort of well-being is actually something they care about. Leaders have a role of modeling behavior, of providing space and saying, hey, this is a hard week. A lot of stuff is going on. Please, go take a walk. Take care of yourself. Take a lunch with your colleagues. We need that space today because we're going through a lot of shifts and translations. That's what leadership can do. They can provide an authorizing environment where taking care of ourselves isn't sort of a thing to do after all the work is done, but it's actually the way that we do our job effectively, not just for the deadline that's coming in today or next week, but over the course of months and years and federal careers. Individuals. So we're all 100% responsible for our own well-being. Even when the supervisor is asking something of you, even when your agency is asking something of you, we all, myself included, need to pay attention to what's happening in us. I think I'm kind of a spiritual person, and I kind of talk about there's two kind of domains to this. There's self-awareness, sort of when I see my program being shut down, when I look to my left and a colleague that's no longer there, what is happening in me? Am I feeling scared? Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling still committed and dedicated? There's a self-awareness aspect. And there's also a self-diagnosis. It's like, what do I need to get back to a place where I can think clearly, where I can manage all the stress of this transition myself? And that's going to vary enormously for individuals, what that self-diagnosis is. For some people, that means making sure you get your morning run in. For some, that means taking a lunch and actually taking a break, not looking at your phone, but actually finding space. For me, practices around mindfulness, meditation, kind of communities within the federal government that support this has been a really important part for me for two reasons. One, it provides space for me to process what's going on, to slow down, to connect to my breath, my body, such that I don't get overwhelmed by what's happening. That's the first thing. The second part is it creates community. It creates a way for us to look at what's happening in the federal government right now. When leaders are not really naming what people are experiencing, when they're not saying, this is hard, they're saying, no, we have a mandate, we're going to do these things. They're not saying, we understand how difficult this is. And absent that, one option as an individual would be to sort of absolve your responsibility. Say, you know what? Our leaders aren't going to do the hard work of talking to what actually matters, giving us the space, and so I'm just going to check out. That's option A. Option B is we take responsibility for our own well-being as a collective too. And so we find our people at work. We find our colleagues that we can connect to openly and honestly, and we connect with them. We go for walks with them. We find space to say, like, I am not crazy that I'm feeling dysregulated by this, that I think this is wrong. And so you find others that feel the same way. And the sad thing is, over the course of these few months, not only have a lot of decisions been made that have been deeply sort of, I think, unprofessional in the way they've been done in terms of how crass they've been, how sort of sudden they've been, but they've also broken down some of the support systems that used to care for people. And my agency, my former agency, General Services Administration, we had a mindful GSA community. We meet every week doing yoga, doing mindfulness as a way for us to connect to one another, connect to ourselves. Program shut down. Similarly, there are grief support groups. There are other affinity groups that have been shut down. And so while individuals have a role of their own personal well-being, a role in finding collective well-being in their communities, leaderships, organizations have a role in facilitating that, making it easier, making that road for us to maintain our well-being for not just the short term, but for the long term, to make it easier. And right now in the federal government, we're actually making it harder for people to stay well.
Alex, are you seeing at this point any move towards stability? Certainly these last few months have been very disruptive, but maybe the wave of the disruption has kind of crashed, and are people finding a new equilibrium? And if so, how is that happening?
It's tricky. I mean, I just left a few weeks ago, federal workforce. And I think in some ways, sort of the cascade of like checking your email on a Friday afternoon to see if something's happening, that has thankfully slowed down. But I think one of the challenges is like it's like waiting for things to get better. It's always waiting for things to get better. It's like, oh, okay. It was in February. It was like wait until March and things will calm down. In March it was wait until the summer and things will calm down. Then it's wait until the fall and things will calm down. And so this is sort of this process of like things not kind of slowly getting better, but there's still being this larger kind of veil of things can still happen. But I think like the thing that the thing that I wrote in that article in Federal News Network is you can't put this genie back in the bottle. Like once you start treating a federal workforce not as something to treasure, something to keep on, to incentivize them to come back to government, to stay there, to not leave to the private sector where they get better more money, more responsibility, these types of things. Once you sort of shift it from a kind of relational public service motivation mindset to a transactional, I could fire you if I wanted to. And that's sort of the idea from leadership. Once you sort of shift that, it's really hard to put that kind of back in the bottle. And I think for many people that I worked with who've been in public service for a long time, who've been doing it because they cared about it, it shifted a bit more to, well, I need this paycheck. And that was really tragic for me to see. People who have been drawn in by the quality of the work, the quality of the people that they were helping, shifting instead to, well, I guess I can hang on. And it's hard to shift that back.
So I'm going to kind of come back this way around the table. How do we, with the leaders that we have, the middle managers that we have, and the workforce that we now have, kind of get a collective grip on where we are, maybe not where we want to be, but where we are, and begin to move forward on the occupational health journey? So I'm going to go Alex, and then I'll come back around.
Yeah. Don't launch any new initiatives. There's enough of that. But use the touch points that we have already to connect people as humans. Like we've got mid-year and annual performance reviews. Like how many times in my federal career has that been a check the box exercise of like, yeah, we got to fill in the form, like you're doing fine, check, go on. Like use that to actually check in how people are doing and what they need. Are they feeling felt? Do like their lives matter to people? And so looking through the different ways you can take that team meeting once a week, that off-site, and not just say, what is our, how are we going to pivot strategically given this moment? But how are we going to pivot emotionally? How are we actually going to make people feel that what's happened these past few months has landed in people's systems, in their bodies? And we need to work through that. And federal employees, they're no strangers to adversity. They're no strangers to hard times and kind of decisions that change rapidly. And so we're used to that. We are resilient. But the question is, like, how do we help them be resilient by making them feel seen and welcomed and wanted?
I love that suggestion. Scott?
The other thing is I would stay focused on the North Star. As Alex mentioned, everybody came into public service because they wanted to make a difference. And whether you're a nurse in the VA providing health care to a veteran, whether you're working in DoD keeping our nation safe from adversaries, or whether you're in the National Park Service and making a family's vacation extra special that day, keep focused on the North Star, because those missions are not going away. People need those great vacations. They need their health care, and we need a safe country. And those three examples, and the more that we can kind of, as new people come into the government and regain that back, and I understand it will take time, for sure. But remember that the American people need us as public servants. I think number two, it is a reimagined moment, for good or for bad. As we think about the new ways and how do we leverage technology, how do we rethink processes, how do we, it is an opportunity, right? And there's the old expression, never let a crisis go to waste. And so how do we make the best of the situation to reimagine government and deliver things better? And then the third thing is, along the lines of what I was talking about earlier with leadership, is those people who are still here, who are leading our people, that have chosen, to continue. And I have family members that some have, taken early retirement, some have, decided to continue. Like those people need to be taken care of, their teams. They need to be taking care of their people. They need to be keeping everybody focused on mission. They need to continue delivering services. And those leaders throughout the organization are going to be needed more than ever. And just be ready to step up, and that should be honorable, and we should honor those people that are going and doing that on our behalf.
Okay. Joe?
I would just add to that, double down on all the mission related and the idea that we do need to do government differently. I mean, we've heard that from the public for decades now, that they don't feel that government is meeting their needs. They're not getting the services that they need, want, and deserve in the way that they want them, in an analogous way that they're getting the services in the private sector. So we do need to keep that as our North Star. Like, we're trying to serve people, and it's the mission that's so critical. The other thing I would say in terms of where we are at this moment, if you're a leader or manager in the federal government, I mean, you have to be brutally honest about this is where we are. I mean, like, this is, and acknowledge and allow your employees to voice those concerns and take those concerns. But then you've got to be able to demonstrate action. It's like, it's not enough to hear people. You've got to demonstrate that you've actually, not just listened to them, but that you've really heard them. And you do that by taking action. And I think as leaders, we need to be able to demonstrate our credibility, we need to demonstrate our respect to other people, and we need to demonstrate that we are fair to the people that we work with. And I think that's really critical moving forward.
Colleen?
There's been a lot of good that's been shared already. I would just double down on a few things. So anyone who knows me knows I'm the internal optimist, but acknowledging that there is challenge and acknowledging that there is still some amount of pain out there, I think is really key for managers. Not everyone experiences change in the same way, and not everyone manages change with the same facility. So I think being open to listening, really hearing, understanding where people are at, being honest about where the organization is at, but then I think the challenge for managers is to pivot towards, let's focus, let's orient towards where we can go. Where can we find opportunities through disruption? How can we use this change to better support the public? I think that is going to be the key. And also just reminding employees that there is only so much that we control, right? So let's focus on the things that we can control, or that where we can have an impact that's meaningful, and let's focus our efforts there. Again, supporting agency mission, but there's only going to be so much that we as individuals or we as our work unit are able to influence, and so we should focus there.
So this has been really helpful in terms of thinking about guidance that everyone could use. But Colleen, I'm not finished with you yet.
Okay, great.
You chair the Chico Council. Those human resources leaders are oftentimes on the front lines of organizational health. They're the ones that have the people problems, the vacancies, the announcements, the hiring issues, the performance management system. They've kind of got the tools and they're the first ones to feel the change. What are they saying right now? What's on their wish list when it comes to organizational health? What are they saying they need?
Yeah, first, thanks for acknowledging that we're on the front lines. I have often said folks in HR tend to see employees on their best days, and we also see employees on their worst days. And we also straddle, I think, obligations to agency leadership and management and to provide strategic advice. We are also the folks implementing and hearing from employees who are absolutely necessary to do the work of the agency. So we're really at a couple different intersections there. I think that one of the things that Chicos are thinking about as we move forward, so I mentioned sort of opportunity that comes from disruption, and I think there is a lot of excitement around some potential for greater use of IT, consolidation of HR IT, and how we might more efficiently deliver support to the federal workforce. At the same time, with employees specifically, I think it's really thinking through as we think about skills that we will need to be successful so that we can continue to deliver on mission, knowing that we have experienced some losses. How are we assessing sort of the competence of our workforce and really making sure that people are best positioned to be successful and to help the agency be successful? So thinking about upskilling where we might need to, reskilling people who might be filling new roles or satisfying sort of new obligations. I think those types of things are top of mind. And then, as always, evergreen, how do we attract people to federal service? How do we continue to ensure that we have the best and the brightest coming, knowing that maybe some of our value proposition has changed over time, right? There is still a ton of meaningful work to do in government. We are particularly interested in attracting early career talent. So really thinking through how we do that and how do we offer sort of really meaningful opportunities for development, not for our just for our current workforce, but also for early career talent who may be interested in pursuing that North Star to really serve the American public.
Thank you for that. All right, we've talked a lot about what's happening in the government right now. We've talked about the current turbulence and turnover and leadership and shifts in priorities, all of which would be threatening to any organization at any time. But in our current day, there's another big disruptor out there called AI, right? And nobody knows what is going to happen here. So as we sort of wrap up our discussion, and we're talking about organizational health, and we're talking about how individuals and leaders and agencies deal with uncertainty at every level, I want to kind of go around the table again, and we'll go the opposite direction.
Thank you.
What is AI doing in this mix, and how can we grab a hold of it and turn it to positive for change?
This is something I know that the Chico community has given a lot of thought to, and certainly my colleagues at OPM have been thinking about for a number of years. I think that there are likely some really interesting use cases for AI in government as a tool. I don't see a world, and I don't think we see a world where AI is going to completely replace the human interaction that many of our citizens rely on with federal employees. But where I see AI really being helpful, particularly to the HR community, is to better enable us to support, the 2 million or so, colleagues that we have with, everything from processing their personnel actions, maybe providing some quick information, as an employee may have questions, writing position descriptions, things like that really can be, sort of taking up a lot of time. If we can use AI as a tool to help facilitate some of that work, it allows us to be more strategic partners, more available to agency leadership as we're maybe trying to influence decisions or help them make good decisions about the workforce. And in those places where AI can't solve the issue, really giving us more time to interact with an employee to help solve a problem.
Is there a sense in the HR community yet about that replacement question? It seems to have been sort of a going in proposition with the Trump administration that AI will in fact help us to do more with less.
I think it will, but I don't get the sense from the Chicos or from OPM that anyone thinks AI will completely replace people. Again, I think it's going to be and has potential to be a powerful tool for us. but I don't see it, sort of eliminating the HR workforce, for example.
Okay. Joe?
Yeah, I would just add on to that. So as you know, Terry, one of the grand challenges in public administration is to make AI, government AI ready. I was going to say AI government ready. No, government AI ready. And we announced that a number of years ago before, I think, really the explosion that we've seen. And I would just build on what Colleen was saying in terms of, I see it as a tool. I see it as something that increasingly leaders and managers and the agency from a strategic standpoint is going to have to think about, how do you really deploy this? It's going to be kind of part of your workforce, but I think it's going to be a tool. I think that human beings are always going to be better at the overall creativity and problem solving and the connection, but we're going to be able to use this more and more as a tool, but we've got to make sure that it's transparent, that people understand why we're using this, how we're using this, kind of demystify AI. A lot of people, they just hear this and they're like, I'm not a technologist. And it's not about the technology per se, it's really about how you use it. And being able to think strategically about how best you can use that as part of your workforce and your delivery of services.
And part of making government AI ready was to make sure that leaders are informed and prepared for this kind of shift.
Right. And so you need to be able to understand it. Everybody needs to have a basic understanding of AI. It's increasingly going to be what are you doing if you're not on the internet? What do you mean you can't do a Google? It's of course you're going to have to go on and use some AI. So I think I would encourage leaders to actually learn about it themselves, but not worry that you're not a technologist per se. It's really about how do you deploy this to greatest effect, both for your workforce and for your overall performance, to kind of bring it back to org health in org health terms.
Scott, what are the lessons from the private sector on AI and org health?
Well, this is really the third major technology revolution in the last 50 years, and with the first two being the introduction of PCs in the late 70s and 80s into the workplace and how it impacted. Then the second one being the internet, which came in the late 90s and through the early 2000s, really revolutionized. And AI looks like it's going to be of that magnitude, and it is absolutely going to change the way that we work. And I agree with Joe that all of us need to get as smart as possible and build our own individual capabilities because it's also evolving really quickly. Just in the last couple of years, we've seen it move from AI, which by the way has been around for a long time, to Gen AI with the opening of ChatGPT a couple of years ago. Now we're seeing agentic AI. And in the private sector, particularly with the advent of agentic AI, we're seeing organizations, and McKinsey is one of them, in which we have our own Gen AI system that we call Lily, and our people, we've introduced agents, and our young analysts are the ones creating these agents that are doing everything from rewriting emails to solving problems to gathering data to. And I think the overall hope, and I agree with Colleen, is I don't think it's going to replace decision making in particular, but if you take something like a claim, right, and it could be in the private sector, an automotive claim or an insurance claim, or in the government if it's a disability claim or a medical claim, right, all the information that you're able to kind of get as quickly as possible, synthesizing that information, that can save all kinds of time. It can save all kinds of rework. It can save all kinds of cost, and it can make and inform a better decision if done right. But still, at the end of the day, you need a human being, right, to make that decision, not a computer. And I think if we use AI and we upskill ourselves in a way that makes it as productive as possible, the sky's the limit. If we lag behind it, those organizations, whether it's private or public sector, are going to be in a world of hurt over the next couple of years. In the private sector, if you're not on the cutting edge of AI, and I'm not just talking Silicon Valley type of organizations, I'm talking consumer companies, mining companies, industrial companies. If you're not on the cutting edge of AI, you are very quickly going to fall behind because you're going to be higher cost. You're going to not provide the service to your customers. You're not going to be able to make as quick decisions as others will be. So organizations really need to be on the cutting edge, and government's no different.
So no pressure. No stress, no pressure. Alex, this feels like the perfect place to wind it up. with the individual, we've talked again about kind of how AI is flowing from the top down. What is the impact to the individual employee right now? And how do they stay grounded with all of this uncertainty?
It's a pretty mixed impact. And I think it's one that we can make decisions now about changing. So for me, there's two questions that come up. So obviously AI is going to save us time. It's going to make things more efficient. Like, I did not love reformatting spreadsheets and writing draft emails to people. And now AI is doing that in seconds. And it's amazing. The question is, what do we do with that time that we're saving? Do we cut the jobs and just have people like do those prompts and do that work? Or are we using that time to actually build relationships with people like all you has shared? It's like, what are we doing with that saved time? The second question is, what are we displacing by turning to AI? I just want to give you an example. I was working on an email to a stakeholder in my last job, and I was like going back and forth with AI, like how to frame this sort of thing. I talked to my colleague, and we're like, actually, we don't even need to send this email in the first place. And so these sort of conversations that are relational, that are about strategy, that are about structure, that are about innovation, creativity, AI is not going to help you with those. It's going to give you a bunch of ideas. It's going to regurgitate ways that you can like frame this different thing. In terms of like the real work of thinking strategically, of thinking creatively, of building relationships with each other, like that's the thing that I worry we are displacing with AI. The number of times that people have asked AI for help with, I'm onboarding and I want AI to help me solve this thing, versus turning to their colleague and saying, what did you do when you first joined? It's those sort of relationships that I think AI is making us think that we don't need, and leaders who are implementing AI think that we don't need. And if I have time for one more example, at the first town hall as an organization for GSA when I was there earlier this year, it was an hour long. About 40 minutes were spent demoing the new AI chatbot. How much time was spent on how are people doing? How are people dealing with this overall like context where we have an AI chatbot, so we don't need the people that were your colleagues and your friends who were fired? Like, that conversation was not happening at all. And so, yes, AI is exciting. Yes, that's great. But I think we all agree that we need to invest in the people, and we have to be really conscious that AI is not convincing us that we don't need each other anymore.
Well, as I suspected, you would leave us in a good place. This has been a fascinating conversation. I think I would leave it to say we care about healthy organizations because healthy organizations work better. They're full of healthy people. They're full of inclusive leaders, and people want to work there. So you all have left a lot of great advice for folks today. Thank you. I'm Terry Gerton, and you've been watching the discussion, How to Create Healthy Organizations and Why You Want to, sponsored by WAEPA. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com, search WAEPA.
On behalf of WAEPA and in partnership with Federal News Network, I want to thank Terry, our panelists, Colleen Heller-Stein, Alex Snider, Scott Blackburn, and Dr. Joe Mitchell, and all of you for joining us today. As you heard earlier, this panel was recorded prior to the recent shutdown and the uncertainties federal employees have faced. But the themes we discussed remained important. A healthy organization, one that communicates clearly, supports its workforce, and adapts to change is essential for mission success, especially in challenging periods. Hope you found the insights valuable as you think about strengthening your own teams and agencies. Before we close, please take a moment to complete the brief survey you will receive in a follow-up email. Your feedback helps us continue to improve this program every year. And remember, today's session will be available on demand. Thank you again for being part of the 2025 Fed Summit and annual member meeting. And we look forward to seeing you next year.